Hello everyone and welcome back to our English lesson. Today, we're going to learn one of the most useful grammar topics in English, adjective clauses, also known as relative clauses. Have you ever wanted to describe a person, a place, or a thing in more detail without writing two separate sentences? For example, instead of saying, "I have a friend. He lives in Australia." Native English speakers usually combine these ideas into one sentence. I have a friend who lives in Australia. This sounds smoother, more natural, and more fluent. Adjective clauses are everywhere. You will hear them in everyday conversations, movies, news reports, academic articles, business emails, and English proficiency tests. Once you understand how they work, your English will immediately become more advanced because you'll be able to connect ideas naturally instead of writing many short sentences. So, in today's lesson, we're going to learn what an adjective clause is, why we use it, how to form it correctly, how to use each relative pronoun, how to combine sentences, and even how to reduce adjective clauses into shorter forms. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to use adjective clauses confidently in both speaking and writing. Now, let's begin. What is an adjective clause? An adjective clause, or relative clause, is a dependent clause that describes or gives more information about a noun or pronoun. Just like an adjective describes a noun, an adjective clause also describes a noun, but it does so using a complete clause containing a subject and a verb. Look at this example. I met a girl who won the English competition. In this sentence, the noun is girl, and the words who won the English competition tell us more about that girl. The clause answers the question, which girl? Therefore, it functions exactly like an adjective. Let's look at another example. I bought a laptop that works very fast. The adjective clause that works very fast describes the noun laptop by giving additional information about it. So, remember this important point. An adjective clause always modifies a noun or pronoun. Why do we use adjective clauses? Now you may wonder, why don't we just write two separate sentences? Let's compare them. First, I have a friend. She studies in Canada. These two sentences are correct, but they sound disconnected. Now combine them. I have a friend who studies in Canada. This sounds much more natural. We use adjective clauses because they help us combine ideas into one smooth sentence. They make our writing more organized, reduce repetition, and allow us to provide extra information without starting a new sentence. This is why adjective clauses are common in essays, presentations, newspaper articles, and everyday conversations. The structure of an adjective clause. The basic pattern is quite simple. Noun plus relative pronoun plus subject plus verb plus the rest of the sentence. For example, the teacher who teaches English is very kind. Here, teacher is the noun, who is the relative pronoun, and teaches is the verb inside the clause. Another example is, the movie that we watched yesterday was exciting. In this sentence, the adjective clause describes the noun movie. Whenever you see a clause immediately following a noun and giving more information about it, there's a good chance it's an adjective clause. Relative pronouns. Now, let's learn the relative pronouns one by one. Using who. We use who when talking about people, especially when the person is the subject of the clause. For example, the teacher who teaches grammar is very patient. The adjective clause tells us which teacher we're talking about. Another example is, the student who won first prize received a scholarship. Imagine someone asks, who is David? You can answer, David is the student who always gets the highest score in our class. Notice how who introduces extra information about a person. Using whom. Now, let's look at whom. We use whom when the person is the object of the verb rather than the subject. Although whom is grammatically correct, it is mostly used in formal writing. In everyday English, many native speakers simply use who, or even omit the relative pronoun. For example, the teacher whom I respect retired last year. In everyday conversation, people often say, "The teacher who I respect retired last year," or even, "The teacher I respect retired last year." All three are acceptable, although the first one is more formal. Using whose. Next is whose, which shows possession. Look at this example. The girl whose father is a doctor won the competition. The adjective clause tells us something that belongs to the girl, her father. Another example is, I met a man whose son studies abroad. You can also say, the student whose laptop was stolen reported the incident to the teacher. Whenever you want to show ownership or possession, use whose. Using which. We use which for animals and things. For example, the book which I borrowed is very interesting. Another example is, the computer which stopped working needs to be repaired. The adjective clause gives additional information about a thing. Using that. The word that is one of the most commonly used relative pronouns because it can replace who or which in many defining adjective clauses. For example, the movie that we watched was fantastic. Or, the teacher that helped me explained everything clearly. You can also say, the dog that barked all night belongs to our neighbor. In everyday English, that is very common and natural. Using where. We use where when talking about places. For example, this is the restaurant where we had dinner. Or, I visited the village where my grandparents were born. The adjective clause tells us more about the place. Using when. We use when to describe time. For example, I still remember the day when I graduated from university. Another example is, Sunday is the day when my family usually has dinner together. The adjective clause gives more information about a particular time. Using why. Finally, we use why after the noun reason. For example, I know the reason why she left early. Another example is, nobody understands the reason why the project failed. Defining and non-defining adjective clauses. There are two important types of adjective clauses. The first is the defining adjective clause. This type gives essential information. Without it, the sentence would lose its meaning. For example, students who study regularly usually get better grades. Here, the clause tells us exactly which students we're talking about. The second type is the non-defining adjective clause. This type gives extra information. The sentence is still complete without it and commas are used. For example, my English teacher, who has taught for 20 years, is retiring next month. The information between the commas is interesting but not necessary to identify the teacher. Combining two sentences. One of the most useful skills is learning how to combine two sentences into one. Let's practice. First, I met a woman. She speaks 5 languages. We combine them like this. I met a woman who speaks 5 languages. Another example. I bought a phone. It was on sale. The combined sentence becomes, I bought a phone that was on sale. One more example. This is the cafe. We met there. We combine them as, this is the cafe where we met. Notice how adjective clauses make sentences shorter, smoother, and easier to understand. Reduced adjective clauses. Advanced English learners often shorten adjective clauses. For example, instead of saying, the man who is standing by the door is my uncle, we can reduce it to, the man standing by the door is my uncle. Another example, instead of, the books that were written by Shakespeare are famous, we say, the books written by Shakespeare are famous. Another example is, she was the first student who finished the exam. This becomes, she was the first student to finish the exam. Reduced adjective clauses are common in academic writing because they make sentences more concise. Common mistakes. Many English learners make similar mistakes. For example, some students say, I have a friend which lives in Australia. This is incorrect because which is used for things, not people. The correct sentence is, I have a friend who lives in Australia. Another mistake is saying, The city who I visited was beautiful. The correct sentence is, the city that I visited was beautiful. Be careful to choose the correct relative pronoun according to whether you're talking about a person, a thing, a place, or a time. Real-life examples. Let's see how adjective clauses appear in daily life. At school, a teacher might say, students who finish the test early may leave quietly. At work, a manager could say, employees who arrive on time will receive a bonus. While shopping, you might hear, I bought a jacket that was 50% off. When traveling, someone may say, Thailand is a country where many tourists spend their holidays. At home, you could say, my grandmother, who is 80 years old, still exercises every morning. As you can see, adjective clauses are everywhere. Today, we have learned that adjective clauses are an important part of English grammar. They help us describe people, places, things, and ideas more clearly. Instead of writing several short sentences, we can combine them into one smooth and natural sentence. This makes our English sound more fluent, more professional, and much closer to the way native speakers communicate. Don't worry if you cannot use adjective clauses perfectly right away. Every English learner needs time and practice. The more you read books, watch English videos, listen to conversations, and write your own sentences, the more natural adjective clauses will become. Remember, grammar is not just about memorizing rules. It is about learning how to communicate your ideas clearly and confidently. So, don't be afraid to make mistakes because every mistake is another opportunity to improve your English. Thank you so much for learning with me today. I hope this lesson has helped you understand adjective clauses much better. Keep practicing every day, stay curious, and most importantly, enjoy learning English. I'll see you again in our next lesson. Tips for mastering adjective clauses. Here are a few practical tips to help you master adjective clauses more quickly. Start with simple sentences. Practice combining two short sentences into one using who, that, or which before moving on to more advanced relative pronouns. Choose the correct relative word. Remember, who is for people, which is for things, whereas for places, when is for time, who shows possession, and why follows the noun reason. Read English regularly. Pay attention to adjective clauses in news articles, novels, and online blogs. The more examples you see, the more naturally you'll use them. Listen to native speakers. Movies, podcasts, and YouTube videos are excellent resources because adjective clauses appear frequently in natural speech. Write a few sentences every day. Describe your family, your school, your workplace, or your hobbies using adjective clauses. Daily practice builds confidence. Don't memorize every rule at once. Focus on understanding how adjective clauses connect ideas. Accuracy improves gradually through practice. Review your writing. Whenever you finish an essay or paragraph, check whether you can combine short sentences with adjective clauses to make your writing more fluent and cohesive. Keep practicing, and before long you'll find yourself using adjective clauses naturally in conversations, presentations, emails, and academic writing. That brings us to the end of today's lesson on adjective relative clauses. Today, we've learned what adjective clauses are, why they are important, how to use the different relative pronouns such as who, whom, whose, which, that, where, when, and why, and how they help us combine ideas into clear, natural, and fluent English sentences. We also explored the differences between defining and non-defining clauses, learned how to reduce adjective clauses, and practiced using them in real-life situations. Remember, learning grammar is not about memorizing every rule perfectly. It's about understanding how English works and using it to communicate your ideas with confidence. Don't worry if you make mistakes at first. That's a normal part of learning. The more you read, listen, speak, and write in English, the more naturally adjective clauses will become part of your everyday language. Before our next lesson, I encourage you to practice by writing 10 sentences using adjective clauses. Try describing your family members, friends, teachers, your school, or your hometown. The more you practice, the faster your confidence and fluency will grow. Thank you so much for joining me in today's lesson. I truly appreciate you taking the time to learn with me, and I hope this lesson has helped you understand adjective clauses more clearly. If you found this lesson helpful, don't forget to review your notes and practice what you've learned. Thank you once again for watching and learning with me. I wish you all the best in your English learning journey. Keep practicing, stay curious, believe in yourself, and never stop learning. Take care, keep improving your English every day, and I'll see you in the next lesson. And that's all for today's lesson on adjective relative clauses. I hope you now have a much clearer understanding of how adjective clauses work and how you can use them to make your English more natural, fluent, and effective. Remember, grammar isn't something you master overnight. It takes regular practice, so don't be discouraged if you make mistakes. Every sentence you write and every conversation you have is another opportunity to improve. Here's a small challenge for you. After this lesson, write 10 sentences using adjective clauses. Try using who, which, that, whose, where, and when to describe people, places, things, and events in your own life. The more you practice, the more confident you'll become. If you enjoyed this lesson and found it helpful, please give this video a thumbs up so I know to create more English lessons like this. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any upcoming lessons on English grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, speaking, and writing. I'd also love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me which part of today's lesson you found the most useful or which grammar topic you'd like me to explain next. I'll read your comments, and your suggestions may inspire future lessons. Thank you so much for spending your time learning with me today. I truly appreciate your support and your commitment to improving your English. Keep practicing a little every day, stay motivated, and remember that every great English speaker started as a beginner. Until next time, take care, keep learning, keep believing in yourself, and keep speaking English with confidence. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.
Goodbye.